The dust kicked up behind the lone rider as he approached Galesburg, Illinois, and Penelope Norwood felt her heart stop the moment she recognized the silhouette against the setting sun of that September evening in 1878. She stood frozen on the porch of the general store her father had left her when he passed 2 years prior, her hand still gripping the broom she had been using to sweep away the day's accumulation of prairie dust. The rider moved closer, and there was no mistaking that particular way he sat in the saddle, the tilt of his hat, the broad set of his shoulders. Connor Davis had come back. Penelope's mind raced backward to 3 years ago, when Connor had left without a word, disappearing into the night like smoke after a fire burns out. They had been inseparable that summer of 1875. 2 young people who had grown up together in this small town on the edge of the prairie, childhood friendship blossoming into something deeper and more profound. She had been 19 then, he 21, and they had talked about marriage, about building a life together right here in Galesburg. Then one morning he was simply gone, and no one seemed to know why or where. The horse slowed as it reached the hitching post in front of her store, and Connor dismounted with the same fluid grace she remembered. He was taller than she recalled, or perhaps he simply carried himself differently now. His face had weathered some in the intervening years, tiny lines appearing at the corners of his eyes, his jaw more defined beneath the shadow of stubble. He tied his horse carefully, taking his time, and she wondered if he was gathering courage the same way she was struggling to remember how to breathe. Finally, he turned to face her, removing his hat to reveal dark hair that needed cutting. His eyes, that particular shade of blue that had haunted her dreams for 3 years, met hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. "Penelope," he said, his voice rougher than she remembered, deeper somehow. "Connor," she managed to reply, proud that her voice did not shake as much as her hands. He took a step toward the porch, then seemed to think better of it, stopping at the bottom of the 3 wooden steps that separated them. "I know I have no right to be here. I know I should have stayed away." "Then why did you not?" The words came out sharper than she intended, 3 years of hurt and confusion giving them an edge. Connor looked down at his hat, turning it in his hands, a gesture she recognized from when they were young and he was working through something difficult. "I tried to forget you," he said finally, looking back up at her with such raw emotion in his eyes that she had to grip the porch railing to steady herself. "But my heart would not let me." The world seemed to narrow to just the 2 of them standing there in the fading light. Penelope felt tears prick at her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had cried enough over Connor Davis in the past 3 years. "That is a beautiful sentiment," she said, her voice tight, "but it does not explain why you left. It does not explain why you never wrote, never sent word, never gave me any indication you were even alive. I know." He climbed 1 step, then another, until he stood just below her, close enough that she could see the pain etched in every line of his face. "I made a terrible mistake, Penelope. The worst mistake of my life. And I have spent every day since trying to figure out how to make it right, how to come back and face you." "What mistake?" she demanded. "What could possibly have been so terrible that you had to vanish completely?" Connor took a deep breath, and she could see him steeling himself for whatever he was about to say. "My father. Before he died, he took out a loan from a man in Chicago, a dangerous man. After Pa passed, that man came to collect and I had nothing to give him. He said he would take payment another way. He said he would hurt the people I loved if I did not work for him, do things for him." Penelope's anger began to shift, making room for understanding, though the hurt remained. "What kind of things?" "At first, just deliveries. Packages I was not supposed to look inside, taken to places I was not supposed to ask about. But then it got worse." He wanted me to help with robberies, to use my knowledge of the towns and trails around here to plan jobs. I realized I had gotten in too deep, that if I stayed, I would either end up dead or in prison, and either way you would be dragged down with me. So you just left, Penelope said softly. You left to protect me. I left because I was a coward, Connor corrected. A brave man would have gone to the marshal, would have fought back, would have trusted you with the truth. Instead, I ran, thinking I could work off the debt somewhere far away, make enough money to pay back what my father owed and start fresh. But no matter how far I went, no matter what I did, I could not stop thinking about you. I could not stop remembering the way you laughed, the way you looked at me, the plans we made. The tears Penelope had been holding back finally spilled over, running down her cheeks in the twilight. You broke my heart, Connor. When you left without a word, I thought I had done something wrong. I thought you had stopped loving me. Connor was on the porch now, standing right in front of her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him after his long ride. I never stopped, he said fiercely. Not for one single day. Every sunrise reminded me of the morning I taught you to fish at Miller Creek. Every sunset looked like the color of your hair when the light hits it just right. I tried to forget you, Penelope. God knows I tried. But my heart would not let me. She looked up at him, this man who had once been the boy she climbed trees with, who had grown into the person she thought she would spend her life beside. Is the debt paid? She asked. Are you free of that man from Chicago? Connor nodded. I spent 2 years working in the silver mines in Nevada. Brutal work, dangerous work, but it paid well. I sent every penny I could to Chicago, working off what my father owed. 6 months ago, I made the final payment. I am free, Penelope. Free to come home if you will have me. Free to try to earn back what I threw away. You cannot just pick up where we left off, she said, even as her heart screamed at her to forgive him, to throw herself into his arms and never let go. 3 years is a long time, Connor. I am not the same girl you left behind. I can see that, he said softly, his eyes roaming over her face as if memorizing every detail. You are even more beautiful than I remembered. Stronger too, I would wager. Running this store on your own, making a life for yourself. I am proud of you, Penelope. Do not try to charm me, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Being this close to him again was doing strange things to her resolve. She could smell leather and horse and sage, could see the pulse beating in his throat, could remember with perfect clarity what it felt like to be held by him. I am not trying to charm you, Connor said. I am just telling you the truth. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. I know I hurt you in the worst possible way. But I am asking anyway, because I rode all the way from Nevada with one purpose, and that was to tell you that I tried to forget you, but my heart would not let me. I am asking for a chance, Penelope. Not to go back to what we were, but to see if we can build something new. Something stronger, built on honesty this time. Penelope set the broom aside, her hands shaking slightly. She had imagined this moment so many times over the past 3 years, had played out countless scenarios in her mind. In some, she slapped him and sent him away. In others, she collapsed into his arms immediately. But this reality was more complicated than any fantasy, messier and more painful and more real. Where are you staying? She asked finally. I have not thought that far ahead, Connor admitted. I suppose the hotel if they have a room. Mrs. Keller runs the hotel now, Penelope told him. She will rent you a room, but she will also tell everyone in town that you are back by sunrise tomorrow. Let her, Connor said. I am not hiding anymore. I am not running anymore. I am here and I am staying, whether you decide to give me a chance or not. Galesburg is my home, and I should never have left it. The determination in his voice stirred something in Penelope's chest, some ember of the love she had tried so hard to extinguish. "I need time," she said. "You cannot just ride back into town after 3 years and expect me to fall into your arms." "I know," Connor said. "I will wait as long as you need. I have gotten good at waiting, at being patient. I waited 2 years in those mines, counting down the days until I could come back. I can wait a bit longer for you to decide if I am worth a second chance." Penelope looked at him for a long moment, studying his face in the gathering darkness. She wanted to be angry, wanted to hold on to the hurt that had been her constant companion for so long. But underneath all of that, she could feel something else, something she had tried to bury but never quite succeeded in killing. "Hope. Come back tomorrow evening," she said finally. "After I close the store, we can talk more then. Really talk about everything that happened, everything we lost, and maybe, just maybe, what we might be able to build." The smile that broke across Connor's face was like the sun coming out from behind clouds, brilliant and warm and achingly familiar. "Tomorrow evening," he repeated. "I will be here. Thank you, Penelope. Thank you for not sending me away." "Do not thank me yet," she said, but she found herself almost smiling back. "You have a lot of explaining to do, Connor Davis. A lot of making up to do. This will not be easy." "Nothing worth having ever is," Connor said. He reached out as if to touch her hand, then thought better of it, letting his own fall back to his side. "I should go. Let you finish up here. I will see you tomorrow." He backed away, still looking at her as if afraid she might disappear if he took his eyes off her. Then he turned and descended the steps, untying his horse and swinging back into the saddle. With one last long look, he touched the brim of his hat in farewell and rode off down the dusty street toward the hotel. Penelope stood on the porch long after he had gone, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Connor was back. After 3 years of silence, 3 years of questions and hurt and slowly learning to live without him, he had come back. She went inside the store and locked the door, moving through the familiar space in the darkness without needing a lamp to guide her. This store had been her salvation after Connor left, something to pour all her energy and grief into. Her father had died 6 months after Connor's departure, leaving her the business and the small house attached to it out back. She had thrown herself into making it successful, expanding the inventory, building relationships with suppliers, becoming a respected businesswoman in Galesburg despite her young age. In the living quarters behind the store, Penelope lit a lamp and sank into her father's old chair, the one she had never been able to bring herself to replace. Her mind was whirling with everything Connor had told her, trying to piece together the truth of those 3 years. She believed him about his father's debt. Thomas Davis had been a good man but a poor businessman, always making deals that sounded better than they were, always sure that the next opportunity would be the one to pay off. It made sense that he might have borrowed money from the wrong person. And it made a terrible kind of sense that Connor, loyal and protective to a fault, would have tried to handle it alone rather than let anyone else get hurt. But that did not erase the pain of those first months after he left, when she had waited every day for some word, some explanation. It did not erase the humiliation of having people whisper about her, about whether she had done something to drive him away. It did not erase the nights she had cried herself to sleep or the mornings she had woken up and forgotten for just a moment that he was gone, only to have the reality crash over her again. Still, he had come back. He had worked for 2 years in dangerous conditions to pay off a debt that was not even his, and then he had ridden all the way from Nevada to see her. "I tried to forget you, but my heart would not let me." The words echoed in her mind, and despite everything, they kindled warmth in her chest. Penelope barely slept that night, tossing and turning in her bed, alternating between excitement and anxiety about seeing Connor again. By the time dawn broke, she felt exhausted but wired, her nerves singing with anticipation. The day dragged by with agonizing slowness. Customers came and went, needing flour and nails and fabric and 100 other things, and Penelope served them with her usual efficiency while her mind was elsewhere. Sarah Mitchell, who ran the dress shop next door, stopped by mid-morning with news already traveling through town. "Is it true?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Is Connor Davis really back?" "He is," Penelope confirmed, measuring out sugar for old Mr. Hanson. "And you spoke with him?" "I did." Sarah waited for more details, but when Penelope offered none, she pressed further. "What did he say?" "Where has he been?" "That is between Connor and me," Penelope said firmly. Sarah had been a friend during the dark days after Connor left, but she also loved gossip more than anyone else in town, and Penelope had no intention of feeding that particular fire. Sarah looked disappointed but nodded. "Of course. I just hope he has a good explanation for what he put you through." "So do I," Penelope said honestly. As the afternoon wore on toward evening, Penelope found herself growing more and more nervous. She changed her dress twice, then felt ridiculous for caring what she wore. This was Connor, who had seen her covered in mud from helping birth calves and sweaty from helping her father load heavy crates. But this was also Connor after 3 years apart. Connor who had seen things and done things she knew nothing about, who might be a stranger wearing a familiar face. She was counting the money in the register when she heard boots on the porch boards. Looking up, she saw Connor through the window, standing just outside the door, clearly gathering his courage the same way she had been all day. Penelope took a deep breath and went to unlock the door. "Come in," she said. Connor stepped inside, removing his hat just as he had the day before. He looked better than he had last night, cleaned up and freshly shaved, wearing what appeared to be a new shirt. "Thank you for seeing me," he said. "I said I would," Penelope replied. She locked the door behind him and turned the sign to closed, then gestured toward the small table in the corner where she usually ate her lunch. "Sit. I will make coffee." They went through the familiar ritual in awkward silence, Penelope heating water on the pot-bellied stove that kept the store warm in winter, measuring out grounds, pouring 2 cups. It was such a domestic scene, so reminiscent of the future they had once planned, that it made her chest ache. "Tell me about Nevada," she said once they were both seated, nursing their hot coffee. "What was it like?" Connor wrapped his hands around his cup, staring down into the dark liquid. "Harsh," he said finally. "The mine was dark and dangerous and men died regularly, cave-ins mostly or bad air. The pay was good because the work was deadly, but it gave me time to think down there in the dark, time to realize what a fool I had been." "Why Nevada?" Penelope asked. "Why not somewhere closer?" "Because I needed to be far away," Connor said. "Far enough that the man from Chicago would not think to look for me there. Far enough that I would not be tempted to come back before I had fixed things. And because the mines paid the best. I could make more in 1 month there than in 3 months doing ranch work or cowboying." "You could have written," Penelope said quietly. "Even if you could not come back, you could have sent a letter, let me know you were alive." "I was afraid," Connor admitted, meeting her eyes. "Afraid that if I contacted you, that man might find out and use you to get to me. Afraid that if I wrote to you, I would not be able to stay away, and I would come back before the debt was paid and put you in danger. And afraid," he added even more quietly, "that if I wrote to you, you would tell me you had moved on, found someone else, and I would lose even the hope that kept me going." Penelope felt her throat tighten. "There has been no one else," she said. "Men have asked, but I could not. You were still there in my heart, and it felt wrong to try to replace you when I did not even know why you had gone. Connor reached across the table, hesitating with his hand halfway to hers. "May I?" She nodded, and he took her hand in both of his touch warm and calloused and achingly familiar. "I do not deserve you," he said. "I know that, but I am going to spend the rest of my life trying to, if you will let me." "Tell me everything," Penelope said. "I need to know all of it, Connor. Where you went, what you did, what happened in those 3 years. No more secrets." So he told her. He told her about the night the man from Chicago came to his door, about the threats and the fear. He told her about the first few jobs he did, delivering packages and gathering information, hating himself more with each one. He told her about the moment he realized he was being pulled into something he could not escape, something that would destroy him and everyone he loved. "I left in the middle of the night because I was a coward," Connor said. "I convinced myself I was protecting you, but really I was just afraid. Afraid to face you and tell you the truth. Afraid you would try to help and get hurt because of me. Afraid to see disappointment in your eyes. So I ran." He told her about the first few months on the road, working odd jobs and moving constantly, always looking over his shoulder. He told her about hearing of silver strikes in Nevada and deciding that was his answer, that he could lose himself in the mines and earn enough to pay off his father's debt in a fraction of the time it would take doing honest ranch work. "The mine was hell," Connor said bluntly. "Dark and hot and dangerous. We worked 12-hour shifts, sometimes longer. The dust got in your lungs and made you cough up black. Men died and we would just drag their bodies out and keep working. But it paid, Penelope. Every month I sent money to Chicago, working off that debt bit by bit." "Were you hurt?" she asked, noticing for the first time a scar on his forearm that had not been there before. "A few times," he admitted. "Nothing too serious. A cave-in caught me once, buried me up to my waist before the others could dig me out, but I was lucky. I saw men crushed, saw them suffocate, saw them fall down shafts that went so deep we never recovered the bodies." Penelope shuddered, imagining Connor in that terrible place, alone and in danger, all to pay off someone else's mistake. "What about friends? Did you have anyone?" "A few," Connor said. "Men do not get close in places like that. You never know who will be gone tomorrow. But there was one man, Samuel, from Missouri. He had a wife and kids back home, was doing the same thing I was, trying to make enough money to give them a better life. We looked out for each other, made sure the other one made it back to the surface each day." "Is he still there?" Connor shook his head, his expression darkening. "Cave-in last winter. He was standing 10 feet from me one moment, and the next, half the tunnel came down. We dug for 2 days, but there was no saving him. I wrote to his wife, sent her what money he had saved. It was not enough. It is never enough." "I am sorry," Penelope said, squeezing his hand. "It made me realize something," Connor said. "Life is short and unpredictable. Samuel spent 2 years in that mine, 2 years away from his family, working himself to death for a better tomorrow. And he never got that tomorrow. He never made it home. I decided then that I was done waiting. I had sent enough money to Chicago to cover the debt 3 times over. I was coming home, whether I had saved up everything I wanted or not. Because what good is money or security or any of it if you are not with the person you love?" The sun had set while they talked, and the store was growing dark. Penelope rose to light a few lamps, needing a moment to compose herself. Connor's words had shaken something loose inside her, some last wall of resistance she had been maintaining. When she returned to the table, she found Connor watching her with such intensity that it made her breath catch. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That I forgot how beautiful you are," he said simply. "I mean, I did not forget, but my memory did not do you justice. And I am thinking that I want to kiss you so badly it hurts, but I have no right to, not yet." Penelope felt heat rise in her cheeks. Connor Davis, you cannot say things like that. Why not? It is the truth. I promise no more secrets, no more hiding, so I am telling you what I am thinking. I am thinking that I love you, that I have never stopped loving you, and that I want to court you properly this time. I want to take you to church socials and on buggy rides and anywhere else you want to go. I want everyone in Galesburg to know that I am trying to win your heart back. And then, if you will have me, I want to marry you like we planned all those years ago. You are assuming a lot, Penelope said, but she could not keep the smile off her face. Am I wrong? Connor asked. Do you not feel it too, this pull between us? I know I hurt you and I know trust takes time to rebuild, but the love is still there, is it not? I can see it in your eyes the same way you must see it in mine. Penelope sat back down, her knees suddenly weak. Yes, she admitted. The love is still there. It never left, no matter how much I wished it would. It would have been so much easier if I could have just stopped loving you. But you could not, Connor said softly. The same way I could not forget you, no matter how hard I tried. My heart would not let me, Penelope agreed, echoing his words from the day before. Connor stood and walked around the table, kneeling beside her chair so they were at eye level. Give me a chance, he said. Not to go back to what we were, but to build something new, something better. I am not the same man who left, and you are not the same woman. Maybe who we are now can be even better together than who we were then. Penelope reached out and touched his face, feeling the rough stubble under her fingers, the solid warmth of him. He was real, he was here. And despite everything, despite the hurt and the lost years, she wanted this. She wanted him. All right, she said. We can try. But slowly, Connor. You have to earn back my trust. You have to prove to me that you will not run again when things get difficult. I will prove it, Connor promised. Every single day for as long as it takes. Then, before she could second-guess herself, Penelope leaned forward and kissed him. It was gentle and tentative. Nothing like the passionate kisses they had shared 3 years ago, but it was a beginning. A promise of what might be. When they pulled apart, Connor was grinning like a fool. I have dreamed about that for 3 years, he said. Just that. Penelope teased, feeling lighter than she had in years. Well, that and a lot more, Connor admitted. But I am a gentleman, so I will keep those dreams to myself for now. They talked for another hour, the conversation easier now that the hard truths had been shared. Connor told her about his plans to find work in Galesburg, maybe at the Carlson Ranch west of town, which was always looking for good hands. Penelope told him about the changes in town while he was gone, who had married, who had moved away, who had passed on. I should go, Connor said finally, reluctantly. You must be exhausted, and I do not want to presume too much on your time. Will I see you tomorrow? Penelope asked. Every day, Connor promised, if you will have me. I will stop by in the morning before I go look for work, and in the evening when you close up. I will court you properly this time, Penelope Norwood, the way I should have done from the start. She walked him to the door, and he kissed her hand before settling his hat back on his head. Sleep well, he said. You too, she replied, watching as he walked off into the night toward the hotel. The next weeks fell into a pattern that was both familiar and new. Connor found work at the Carlson Ranch as he had hoped, proving himself valuable with his skill with horses and his willingness to tackle any job. Every morning he stopped by the store before riding out to the ranch, and every evening he came back dusty and tired but always with a smile for Penelope. True to his word, he courted her properly. He took her to the church social the first Sunday after his return, holding her hand proudly despite the stares and whispers. He rented a buggy and drove her out to Miller Creek, where they had spent so many afternoons in their youth, and they talked about everything and nothing, slowly rebuilding the connection they had once shared. Gradually, Penelope felt her walls coming down. Connor proved himself reliable and honest, sharing his thoughts and fears with her in a way he never had before. He told her when work was hard, when he was struggling with guilt over the years they had lost, when he worried that she might wake up one day and decide he was not worth the trouble. "You are worth it," she always told him. "You are worth the wait, worth the second chance." 6 weeks after Connor returned, they were sitting on the porch of the store watching the sunset when he said, "I bought some land." Penelope looked at him in surprise. "You did?" 20 acres about 2 miles north of town," Connor said. "It has good water and soil. I have been saving every penny from my wages at the ranch, and when I heard old Peterson was selling off parcels, I put in an offer. It was accepted yesterday." "That is wonderful," Penelope said. "What will you do with it?" Connor took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "Build a house," he said. "Raise some cattle and horses, make a life. I am tired of working for other people, Penelope. I want something of my own, something I can build into a legacy." "That sounds like a good plan," she said carefully, wondering where this was leading. "It is not complete yet," Connor said, turning to face her fully. "The plan, I mean, it is missing the most important part." Her heart started to beat faster. "What part is that?" Connor slid off the porch railing and onto one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. "The part where you agree to be my wife," he said. "The part where you let me spend the rest of my life making up for the time we lost. The part where we build that house together, fill it with children and laughter and love. Penelope Norwood, I love you. I have loved you since we were children, and I will love you until I draw my last breath. I tried to forget you, but my heart would not let me. Will you marry me?" Penelope felt tears streaming down her face, but this time they were happy tears, joyful tears. "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, Connor Davis, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple band with a small diamond that must have cost him every penny he had saved. Then he swept her into his arms and kissed her properly, deeply, the kind of kiss that promised a lifetime of more kisses to come. "When?" he asked when they finally broke apart. "I do not want to wait, Penelope. We have waited long enough." "After Christmas," she said. "That gives us time to plan, for me to make a dress, for you to start building that house." "After Christmas," Connor agreed. "I can wait a few more months if it means getting forever with you." News of their engagement spread through Galesburg like wildfire. Some people were happy for them, remembering the young couple they had been and glad to see them finding their way back together. Others were more skeptical, muttering about Connor's disappearance and wondering if he could be trusted. But Penelope did not care about the gossips. She was happy, truly happy, for the first time in 3 years. Connor threw himself into building their house with the same determination he had brought to working off his father's debt. He hired a couple of men from town to help, and they worked every evening and all day Sunday, slowly raising walls and fitting a roof. Penelope visited the site whenever she could, watching their future take shape board by board. She also began working on her dress, enlisting Sarah Mitchell's help with the design. It would be simple but elegant, ivory silk with lace at the collar and cuffs, suitable for a winter wedding. She sewed in the evenings after closing the store, each stitch a meditation on the future she was building with Connor. They talked about what would happen to the store after they married. Penelope loved the business her father had left her, but managing it from 2 miles outside town would be difficult. Connor suggested she hire someone to help, a manager who could handle the day-to-day operations while she focused on the bigger decisions. "You have built something good here," Connor told her. "I do not want you to give it up for me. We can figure out how to make it work." His willingness to support her work, to see it as valuable rather than something to be abandoned once they married, made Penelope love him even more. This was different from 3 years ago, when they had been so young and had never talked about the practical realities of building a life together. Now they discussed everything, planning and dreaming and making sure they were building a partnership, not just a romance. November arrived with cold winds and the first hints of snow. The house was nearly finished, just needing interior work and furnishings. Connor had built it larger than Penelope expected, with 4 bedrooms and a spacious kitchen, a house designed for a growing family. "I want lots of children," Connor told her as they walked through the empty rooms one Sunday afternoon. "If you do, I want this house to be full of noise and life." "I want that too," Penelope said, imagining the children they would have, the life they would build within these walls. One evening in early December, as they sat by the stove in the store drinking coffee, Connor grew quiet and serious. "I need to tell you something," he said. Penelope felt a flutter of anxiety. "What is it?" "The man from Chicago, the one my father owed money to. I got a letter from him yesterday." The anxiety turned to fear. "What did it say?" Connor pulled the letter from his pocket and handed it to her. She unfolded it with trembling fingers and read the brief message. It confirmed receipt of payment in full and stated that Thomas Davis's debt was satisfied and no further obligation existed. "He is finally acknowledging that it is paid," Connor said. "All of it. I am truly free, Penelope. Free of that debt, free of that life. That chapter is closed for good." Relief flooded through her. "Thank goodness," she said. "I know you said it was done, but some part of me has been worried that he might come after you again." "No," Connor said firmly. "I paid more than what was owed just to make sure, and now I have it in writing. The past is behind us. We can move forward without that shadow hanging over us." As Christmas approached, the excitement in town grew. The wedding would be on the Sunday after Christmas, giving everyone time to recover from the holiday celebrations, but still capturing the festive spirit of the season. Penelope had hired young Martha Collins to help manage the store, training her in the inventory systems and relationships with suppliers. Martha was sharp and eager, and Penelope felt confident leaving the business in her hands during the day while she focused on her new life. The house was finished 2 weeks before the wedding. Connor furnished it with pieces he built himself and others they bought from the furniture maker in town. They carried Penelope's belongings from the store, transforming the empty house into a home. Standing in the kitchen on a cold December afternoon, Penelope felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This was where she was meant to be with this man, building this life. The wedding day dawned clear and cold, with fresh snow covering the ground like a blanket. Penelope dressed in her ivory gown at the store with Sarah helping her with the buttons and arranging her hair. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back, radiant with happiness. The church was packed, with most of Galesburg turning out for the ceremony. Penelope walked down the aisle on the arm of Mr. Carlson, who had offered to give her away since her father was gone. But she barely noticed anyone except Connor, standing at the altar in a new suit, his eyes locked on her with such love and wonder that it made her heart overflow. The ceremony was traditional and beautiful. They spoke their vows in clear, strong voices, promising to love and honor each other for all their days. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife and Connor kissed her, the church erupted in applause and cheers. The reception was held in the church hall, with food and music and dancing. Connor whirled Penelope around the floor, both of them laughing like the young people they had been 3 years ago, but with a depth and understanding they had not possessed then. They had been broken apart and found their way back together, and their love was stronger for it. As the evening wound down and they prepared to leave for their new home, Connor pulled Penelope aside. "Are you happy?" he asked. deliriously, she said. "Are you?" "I am the luckiest man alive," Connor said. "I thought I had lost you forever, but here we are, married, starting our life together. It feels like a dream." "It is real," Penelope assured him, taking his hand. "We are real. This is our second chance, and we are not going to waste it." They rode to their new house in a buggy decorated with ribbons and tin cans, the traditional send-off for newlyweds. Inside, Connor had lit a fire in the fireplace and placed candles throughout the rooms, making the whole house glow with warm light. "Welcome home, Mrs. Davis," Connor said, sweeping her into his arms and carrying her over the threshold. "Welcome home, Mr. Davis," Penelope replied. And then they were kissing, 3 years of longing and separation and finding their way back together pouring into that kiss. Their wedding night was tender and passionate, a reconnection of bodies and souls that had been too long apart. Afterward, lying in Connor's arms in their marriage bed, Penelope felt a completeness she had not known was missing. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Connor replied, pulling her closer. "Today, tomorrow, and every day after that, forever, Penelope." The first years of their marriage were filled with hard work and simple pleasures. Connor built up his herd of cattle and horses, developing a reputation for breeding sturdy stock. Penelope continued to oversee the store while also managing their household, finding satisfaction in both roles. They fell into rhythms and routines, learning each other's habits and quirks, building the kind of deep partnership that only comes with time and commitment. In the spring of 1880, Penelope discovered she was expecting their first child. Connor was overjoyed, fussing over her and trying to prevent her from doing any work at all, until she firmly told him that pregnancy was not an illness, and she was perfectly capable of managing her life. Their son was born in January of 1881, a healthy boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him Thomas after Connor's father, and Connor wept when he held his son for the first time, overwhelmed with love and gratitude. "I wish Pa could see him," Connor said. "I think he can," Penelope replied. "And I think he would be proud of you, Connor, of the man you have become, the father you are going to be." Thomas was a happy baby who grew into a curious toddler, always getting into mischief and making his parents laugh. When he was 2, Penelope discovered she was pregnant again, and in 1883 they welcomed a daughter they named Grace, after Penelope's mother. The house that had seemed so large was beginning to fill with life, just as Connor had hoped. The children brought noise and chaos and endless joy, and Penelope could not imagine her life any other way. As the years passed, their love deepened and matured. They weathered difficulties together. A hard winter that killed some of their cattle, a drought the following summer, Penelope's brief serious illness when Grace was 3. But they faced everything as a team, supporting each other through the struggles and celebrating the victories together. Connor never forgot the debt he felt he owed Penelope for the pain he had caused her. He showed his love in 1,000 small ways, bringing her wildflowers from the range, taking over with the children when she was tired, holding her close at night, and telling her she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. "You do not need to keep making it up to me," Penelope told him once, several years into their marriage. "You have more than proven yourself. I forgive you completely for leaving. I forgave you the moment you came back." "I know," Connor said. "But I still want to spend every day making sure you know how much I love you, how grateful I am that you gave me a second chance." In 1887, when Thomas was 6 and Grace was 4, Penelope gave birth to twin boys, Jacob and Joseph. The house was now truly full, and Penelope found herself constantly busy but deeply content. She had hired a full-time manager for the store, visiting only once a week to check on operations and make major decisions. Her focus was her family now, and she had no regrets about that choice. Connor expanded their land holdings, buying adjacent parcels as they became available. The ranch was prospering, and they were able to put money aside for the children's futures. They talked about building an addition to the house, adding more rooms as the family grew. Thomas showed an early aptitude for working with animals, following his father around and learning everything he could about ranching. Grace was more interested in books and learning, and Penelope made sure she had access to education, despite living outside of town. The twins were still too young to show their interests, but they were energetic and kept everyone on their toes. One evening in the summer of 1889, Connor and Penelope sat on the porch watching their children play in the yard. Thomas was teaching Grace to throw a rope while the twins chased each other in circles, shrieking with laughter. "You remember," Connor said, "when I rode back into town that September evening, when I told you I had tried to forget you but my heart would not let me?" "Of course," Penelope said. "I remember every word you said that day." "Did you ever imagine we would end up here?" Connor asked, gesturing at the scene before them, at the life they had built. "I hoped," Penelope said, "but I was not sure. I was so hurt, so scared of being hurt again." "I am glad you took the chance," Connor said. "I am glad you let me prove myself." "I am glad too," Penelope said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "You were worth the risk." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set over their land. Then Grace came running up to the porch, breathless and excited. "Mama, Papa, look what Thomas taught me." She threw her small rope, managing to loop it around a fence post on the first try. "That is wonderful, sweetheart," Penelope said, clapping her hands. "Very good," Connor agreed. "You are a natural." Grace beamed with pride and ran back to practice more. Connor pulled Penelope closer, kissing the top of her head. "I love our life," he said simply. "So do I," Penelope replied. "So do I." The years continued to pass in a blur of seasons and milestones. Thomas grew into a responsible young man who took on more and more duties at the ranch. Grace continued her studies, showing such promise that they arranged for her to attend a boarding school in Chicago when she turned 14, much as it pained Penelope to be separated from her. The twins grew into mischievous but good-hearted boys who kept everyone entertained with their antics. In 1895, when Thomas was 14 and beginning to think about his future, Connor had a serious talk with him about the ranch. "This will all be yours someday," Connor told his oldest son. "You and your brothers will inherit this land and the business we have built, but only if you want it. If you want to do something else with your life, that is all right too." "I want the ranch," Thomas said without hesitation. "I want to keep building what you and Mama started." "I want to make you proud." "You already make me proud," Connor said, his voice thick with emotion. "Every single day." Penelope watched her husband with their son and felt her heart swell. Connor had become the man she always knew he could be, strong and steady and present. He had never run from another challenge, never disappeared when things got difficult. He had proven himself again and again, and she had never regretted giving him that second chance. In 1898, disaster nearly struck when a fire broke out in one of the barns. Connor and Thomas worked frantically to get the horses out while fighting the flames. Connor was caught by a falling beam and injured his leg badly. For weeks, Penelope feared he might lose the limb, but with careful nursing and the grace of God, he recovered, though he walked with a slight limp afterward. "You scared me," Penelope told him as he recuperated. "I thought I might lose you." "Never," Connor said, taking her hand. "I survived the mines and everything else life has thrown at me. I am not leaving you, Penelope. Not until we are both old and gray and have had every day together that we are owed." "We are already getting gray," Penelope said, touching the silver threads appearing in his dark hair. "Then we will be old and even grayer," Connor amended with a smile. True to form, Connor recovered fully and was back to work within a few months, though he was a bit more careful and willing to let Thomas take on the more dangerous tasks. He was in his early 40s now, and though he was still strong and capable, he was starting to feel his years. In 1900, Grace finished her schooling and returned home, now a poised young woman of 17. She had offers to teach in Chicago, but she chose to return to Galesburg, wanting to be near her family. She started a small school in town, teaching the children of the growing community. Thomas, now 19, was courting a girl from town, Elizabeth Mayers, the daughter of the bank owner. Connor and Penelope liked her immediately, seeing in her the same strength and kindness that had drawn them together. "You think he will marry her?" Connor asked Penelope one night. "I think he will," Penelope said, "and I think they will be happy. She is a good match for him." "He is so young," Connor said. "Only 19. You were 21 when you wanted to marry me," Penelope reminded him. "And he is more mature than you were at that age, no offense." "None taken," Connor laughed. "You are right, and at least he is not making the mistakes I made. He is not running from anything." "No," Penelope agreed. "He learned from your example, from the example of a man who made a terrible mistake but found the courage to come back and make it right." Thomas and Elizabeth were married in the spring of 1901, in the same church where Connor and Penelope had wed 22 years earlier. The young couple moved into a house on the ranch that Connor and Thomas had built together, and Thomas took over more of the day-to-day operations of the business. The twins, now 17, were finishing their schooling and deciding their futures. Jacob wanted to study law and planned to attend university in Chicago. Joseph wanted to stay on the ranch with his father and brother. Connor supported both decisions, proud that his sons were finding their own paths. As the new century settled in, Connor and Penelope found themselves entering a new phase of life. They were still young enough to be active and involved, but their children were grown or nearly so, and they had more time for each other again. They took walks in the evenings, just the two of them, talking about everything and nothing the way they had when they were courting. They made plans for the future, for the grandchildren they hoped would come, for the legacy they wanted to leave. "You have any regrets?" Penelope asked Connor one evening as they watched the sunset from their favorite spot on the hill behind the house. Connor was quiet for a moment, considering. "I regret leaving you that night in 1875, he said finally. "I will always regret that, but I cannot regret the path that eventually led me back to you because it made me into the man I needed to be for you. It taught me what really matters." "What really matters?" Penelope prompted. "Love," Connor said simply. "Family, home, being true to your word and the people you care about. I learned all that in the hardest way possible, but I learned it, and I have tried to live by those lessons every day since." "You have," Penelope said. "You have been everything I hoped you would be and more." In 1903, Thomas and Elizabeth welcomed their first child, a daughter they named Penelope in honor of her grandmother. Connor wept when he held his granddaughter for the first time, overcome with emotion at the continuation of their family line. "She is beautiful," he said, carefully cradling the tiny infant. "She has your eyes," Penelope observed, seeing the same blue in the baby's face that she had fallen in love with all those years ago. As the years passed, more grandchildren arrived. Thomas and Elizabeth had 3 more children. Grace married a schoolteacher from Chicago and had 2 children, and Joseph married and started his own family. The house that Connor had built for just him and Penelope became the center of a large and boisterous extended family, with Sunday dinners that required 2 tables to seat everyone. Connor and Penelope watched their grandchildren grow with the same joy they had felt raising their own children. They told stories of the old days, of Galesburg when it was smaller, of the challenges they had faced and overcome. They taught their grandchildren about hard work and honesty and the importance of family. One story the grandchildren loved to hear was about how Connor came back after being gone for 3 years. "Tell us again, Grandpa," they would beg. "Tell us about when you came back to Grandma." And Connor would tell them, never getting tired of the story. "I rode back into her life after 3 long years," he would say. "And I stood on that porch and told her I tried to forget you, but my heart would not let me, because it was true. No matter where I went or what I did, I could not stop loving her." "And what did Grandma say?" the children would ask, even though they knew the answer. "She gave me a second chance," Connor would say, looking at Penelope with the same love he had felt that first day. "She let me prove that I could be the man she deserved, and I have spent every day since trying to do just that." In 1915, Connor and Penelope celebrated their 37th wedding anniversary. They were in their 60s now, their hair completely gray, their faces lined with years of sun and smiles. But when Connor looked at Penelope, he still saw the young woman on the porch of the general store, still felt his heart skip a beat the way it had that September evening in 1878. "I would do it all again," Connor told her as they sat on their porch, watching the sunset over land that their children and grandchildren now worked. "Every bit of it, the good and the bad, because it led me here, to you, to this life." "Even the mines?" Penelope asked. "Even those terrible 2 years." "Even that," Connor said, "because it taught me what I was capable of. It showed me that I could endure anything if I had something worth enduring for. And you were always worth it, Penelope. You always will be." Penelope took his hand, their fingers interlacing with the ease of decades of practice. "We have been blessed," she said. "In spite of everything, or maybe because of it, we have built something beautiful." "We have," Connor agreed, "and it all started because I could not forget you. Because my heart would not let me." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In the distance, they could hear their grandchildren playing, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. The ranch stretched out before them, prosperous and thriving, a testament to years of hard work and dedication. Thomas appeared on the path from his house, walking with his oldest daughter. They waved to Connor and Penelope on the porch, and Connor waved back, feeling a deep sense of contentment settle over him. "You remember when this was all empty land?" Penelope asked. "When you first bought it and we walked around trying to imagine what it could be?" "I remember," Connor said. "But my imagination was not good enough. This is better than anything I could have dreamed. Better because it is real, because we built it together." As darkness fell, they went inside to the house that had sheltered them for nearly 4 decades. The rooms were full of memories. The kitchen where Penelope had cooked thousands of meals, the living room where they had celebrated birthdays and Christmases, the bedroom where they had loved and laughed and held each other through hard times and good. Connor helped Penelope up the stairs, both of them moving slower than they once did, and they prepared for bed with the familiar routine of a long marriage. When they lay down together, Connor pulled Penelope close, just as he had on their wedding night all those years ago. "I love you," he whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Penelope replied. "Today, tomorrow, and every day after that." "Forever," Connor agreed, and they drifted off to sleep, secure in each other's arms and the life they had built together. The years continued to pass gently. Connor and Penelope grew older but remained active, still involved in the ranch and the lives of their children and grandchildren. They faced the challenges of aging together, supporting each other through illness, and the inevitable slowing down that came with advanced years. In 1920, they celebrated their 42nd anniversary. The whole family gathered at the ranch for a huge celebration, with over 30 people in attendance when all the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren were counted. Connor looked around at the crowd and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "Speech," Thomas called out, and others joined in. Connor stood, his hand on Penelope's shoulder for support. "I am not much of a speaker," he began, "but I want to say something. 42 years ago, I nearly threw away the best thing that ever happened to me. I was young and stupid and scared, and I ran from the woman I loved." He looked down at Penelope, who was smiling up at him with tears in her eyes. "But I came back," he continued. "I rode back into her life and told her that I had tried to forget her, but my heart would not let me. And she, in her grace and mercy, gave me another chance." "Best decision I ever made," Penelope interjected, and everyone laughed. "Best decision she ever made was giving me that chance," Connor corrected with a smile. "Everything good in my life came from that moment, every single thing." He gestured around at the assembled family. "All of you exist because your grandmother believed in second chances. Because she saw something in me worth saving, even when I had given her every reason to send me away." "You saved yourself, Connor," Penelope said, standing to join him. "I just loved you. You did the hard work of becoming the man you wanted to be." "We saved each other," Connor said, putting his arm around her. "And we built this together. This family, this legacy, this love. It is all ours, and I am grateful for every single day of it." The family erupted in applause and cheers, raising glasses to toast the couple who had built such a strong foundation. Later, as the party wound down and people began to leave, Thomas pulled his parents aside. "I have something for you," he said, handing Connor a leather-bound book. Connor opened it to find a family history, meticulously compiled with photographs and stories spanning from his and Penelope's childhoods through to the present day. The first page had a photograph of them on their wedding day, young and hopeful, followed by pictures of their children as babies, their growing family, and finally, the extensive clan they had now. "Thomas, this is incredible," Penelope breathed, carefully turning the pages. "I wanted you to have something that showed what you built," Thomas said. "Not just the ranch, but the family, the love, all of it." "Thank you, son," Connor said, his voice thick with emotion. "This means more than you know." That night, Connor and Penelope sat up late looking through the book, reliving memories and marveling at the life they had created. When they finally turned off the lamp and settled into bed, Connor held Penelope close. "No regrets?" He asked the question he had asked her so many times over the years. "None," Penelope said firmly. "Not a single one. You were worth the wait, worth the risk, worth everything." "So were you," Connor said. "My heart knew it even when my head was too foolish to listen. It would not let me forget you, and I will be grateful for that until my dying day." They fell asleep holding hands, surrounded by the evidence of their love in every corner of the house, in every acre of the ranch, in every child and grandchild and great-grandchild who bore their legacy. Years later, on a warm summer evening in 1925, Connor and Penelope sat on their porch for the last time together. Connor had been ill for several weeks, his body finally giving out after 68 years of life, 47 of them spent loving Penelope. The doctor said it would not be long now, and the family had gathered, understanding that this was goodbye. But for this moment, the children had given them privacy, and Connor and Penelope sat alone watching the sunset one more time. "I am not afraid," Connor said, his voice weak but steady. "I've lived a good life, better than I deserved." "You deserved every bit of it," Penelope said, holding his hand tightly. "You were a good man, Connor Davis, the best man I ever knew." "I was only good because you made me want to be," Connor said. "Everything good in me came from loving you." "We made each other better," Penelope said. "That is what love does." Connor looked out at the land they had built together, at the house that had sheltered them, at the sunset painting the sky in brilliant colors. "Do you remember," he said softly, "what I told you that first day I came back?" "I tried to forget you, but my heart would not let me," Penelope recited, the words carved into her memory forever. "That was true then," Connor said, "and it will be true for whatever comes next. Wherever I go, whatever happens after this, my heart will still belong to you. It will still remember you. It will still love you." Tears streamed down Penelope's face. "I will love you forever too," she promised, "in this life and beyond." Connor smiled, that beautiful smile that had first captured her heart when they were children. "We had a good run, did we not?" "The best," Penelope agreed. "The very best." As the sun set completely and stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Connor took his last breath with Penelope's hand in his, surrounded by the life they had built together. He died as he had lived the last 47 years, completely and utterly loved. The family mourned him deeply, but they also celebrated the life he had lived and the legacy he had left. The funeral was attended by what seemed like half of Galesburg, people whose lives Connor had touched over the years. Penelope lived for 5 more years, staying active in the ranch and the lives of her children and grandchildren. She never remarried, saying that she had had her great love and needed no other. She spent her final years writing down stories of their life together, wanting to preserve the memory of their love for future generations. When she passed peacefully in her sleep in 1930 at the age of 74, the family buried her next to Connor on a hill overlooking the ranch. Her children and grandchildren stood around the grave, remembering the woman who had built such a strong foundation for their family. Thomas, now 50 years old and the patriarch of the family, spoke at her funeral. "My mother believed in second chances," he said. "When my father came back after 3 years, when he told her he had tried to forget her but his heart would not let him, she gave him another chance. And from that single act of faith and forgiveness came all of this." He gestured to the assembled family, to the thriving ranch, to the legacy that would continue for generations. "She taught us that love is a choice, made new every day," Thomas continued. "That it requires courage and forgiveness and commitment. My parents showed us what real love looks like, not perfect or easy, but deep and true and lasting. And that is the greatest gift they could have given us." Years passed, and the story of Connor and Penelope became family legend, passed down from generation to generation. Their descendants spread out across the country, but the ranch remained, worked by Thomas's children and grandchildren, a lasting monument to the love that had started it all. The house Connor built for Penelope stood for decades more, eventually becoming a museum of sorts for the family, preserved as it had been when they lived there. Young couples would visit, wanting to see where the great love story had unfolded, drawing inspiration from Connor and Penelope's journey. The words Connor had spoken that September evening in 1878 became the family motto, inscribed on a plaque that hung over the door. "I tried to forget you, but my heart would not let me." It was a reminder to every generation that real love endures, that it is worth fighting for, worth coming back for, worth building a lifetime around. The ranch prospered through the decades, through depressions and wars and changing times. It remained in the family, passed down from parent to child, each generation adding their own chapter to the story, while honoring the foundation that Connor and Penelope had laid. In the small cemetery on the hill, two simple headstones stood side by side, marking the resting place of Connor Davis and Penelope Davis. Visitors often left flowers there, touched by the romance of the story, inspired by the proof that true love could overcome anything. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sun set over the prairie, people swore they could feel a presence on the hill, as if Connor and Penelope were still there, still together, still watching over the family and the land they had loved so much. Perhaps it was just imagination, or perhaps love really did transcend death, enduring beyond the boundaries of mortality. The legacy they left was not just in land or property or even in descendants, though those were all significant. Their true legacy was in the lesson they taught about the power of second chances, about hearts that would not forget, about love that endured despite mistakes and separation, and the passage of time. Connor had ridden back into her life after 3 years of absence and said the truest words of his life. "I tried to forget you, but my heart would not let me." And Penelope, brave and loving, had given him the chance to prove himself. Together, they had built something beautiful, something lasting, something that would echo through generations. In the end, that was the real story, not just of two people who loved each other, but of what that love created. It was a story of redemption and second chances, of courage and commitment, of building something meaningful out of broken pieces. It was a story that proved love could conquer distance and time and mistakes, that hearts which truly belonged together would always find their way back. And so the story of Connor and Penelope Davis lived on, passed from grandparent to grandchild, told and retold until it became almost mythical. But it had been real as the land they had worked, as real as the children they had raised, as real as the love that had sustained them through nearly 5 decades of marriage. Their story proved that sometimes the heart knows things the head does not, that love can survive separation and hardship, that coming back takes more courage than running away ever did. It proved that second chances are worth taking, that forgiveness is powerful, and that a love built on truth and commitment can withstand anything. The cowboy had ridden back into her life and spoken words that changed everything. And she had been brave enough to believe him, to trust him, to build a life with him. Together, they had created something that would outlast them both, a legacy of love that would inspire generations to come. It was a story worthy of the Wild West, of that era when life was hard and uncertain, but also full of possibility. It was a story that reminded everyone who heard it that love was worth fighting for, worth sacrificing for, worth everything. And in the end, that was the truth that mattered most. Connor and Penelope had found their way back to each other, and they had built a love that would never be forgotten. Their hearts had known what mattered, and they had been brave enough to listen. And that had made all the difference.